yelled at her.
You messed me up.
Okay, fill my water bottle.
Yep.
Go me.
I think it was the 8 that you had.
No, we have 8.
Shouldn't be 8, it should be 6.
It is 6.
Oh, I don't know. Did you figure out where it went wrong? It should be 2.
Yeah.
Okay. For 1A, the order does matter. You have to do the term after minus the term before, right? That's how you get your D. So you have to do 3x minus 7 minus in brackets, because you have to minus both terms, x plus 1. And then you do negative 2x minus 1 minus in brackets 3x minus 7. They both equal D, so you can set them equal to each other and you can solve for x. Now, the 4-term part is the easiest part. You just plug, if you get your x right. It's really terrible if your x is wrong. If your x is right, it's nice. So you plug the 2 back in just for the x's. So term 1 is x plus 1. Well, x is 2, so it's 2 plus 1, so it's 3. Term 2 is 3x minus 7. Well, x is 2, so 3 times 2 is 6, minus 7 is negative 1. Term 3 is negative 2x minus 1, which is negative 5. But I need 4 terms, so I go, hey, 3 to negative 1, I subtracted 4. Negative 1 to negative 5, I subtracted 4. Negative 5 to negative 9, subtract 4. Okay, so keep that in mind. So page 16, 2, 5, and 11 was the homework from yesterday, right? 2, 5, and 11 covered the same exact, each one of those types was like a type on your quiz, right? So we're going to finish up arithmetic sequences today. Now, note to self, if in the question it says arithmetic sequences, there's 2 things we can note. That D is the difference when you take the second term minus the first, or the third term minus the second. That's one thing. We also know that there's only one formula we can use. There is an arithmetic sequences formula. It's the very first one on your formula sheet, and it's the Tn equals T1 plus n minus 1D, right? So if I say arithmetic sequence, that is literally the only formula option you have. So if you're like trying to figure out which one, it's that one. That's it. That's the arithmetic sequence formula. Okay? So we're going to look here. It says determine the unknown terms in each arithmetic sequence. All right? Are you ready? So it says arithmetic sequence, which means I have one formula I can use, right? The formula option I have is Tn equals T1 plus n minus 1D. I also told you that when you are using this formula, you can only be missing one thing if you're trying to solve for something, right? So let's fill in what we do know. So when we look at A, what of those variables do we know? Do we know Tn? Yes, Tn is it's the 16 because it's the last term, right? Like for 16. Equals, do I know T1? Yes, what is it? 4. Plus, do I know n? Yeah. How many are there? 4. So this throws people off. They're like, I don't have n. It's drawn for you. You do. You have 4, right? So that's the thing that people will leave out. They're like, I don't know n, but you do. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. 4 minus 1. And the only thing you don't know is D. What must we do first? The bracket, right? What's 4 minus 1? 3. So we're going to have 16 equals 4 plus 3D. Now I need to solve for D. What's the very first thing I need to move? The 4, the addition subtraction, right? I can't move this 3 off the D. That has to always be my last step. So I have an addition of 4. I'm going to subtract 4. So I'm going to get 12 equals 3D. Then divide by 3. So D equals 4. Once I have D, the rest of this is really easy, because D is just what I add to the next one. Now, if D is negative, I'd be adding a negative, right, which is indirectly subtracting. But D is 4, so I'm going to add a 4. Remember, if D is positive, my number should be going up. And if D is negative, my number should be going down. My numbers are going up. I'm going from 4 to 16, so I know my D better be positive. And it is, so that's good. So let's check it out. So I have 4. If I add 4 to that, I get 8. If I add 4 to that, I get 12. If I add 4 to that, I get 16. Now, some people are like, well, I could have just guessed and checked that, Lepp. That's why you'll end up with sometimes decimals on your test. So you can't guess and check. Great times. You guys are going to try C. We're skipping B for now. We're trying C. You try C. We're going downwards, right? We're getting smaller numbers, so our D should be negative. If it's not, you got problems. So we're going to look at C. So we have Tn equals T1 plus n minus 1D. Tn is negative 10 equals T1, which is 20, plus how many is there? How many blanks? 6, because we count the 2, right? That we're given to us. And then D, we get negative 10 equals 20 plus 5D. Subtract 20. Negative 30 equals 5D. 5 by 5. And my D equals negative 6, which is good because I need it to be negative because I'm getting smaller, right? So I go 20 plus, and so whenever I go to the next term, I add my D, which indirectly is subtracting, but that's okay. 20 plus negative 6 is 14. 14 plus negative 6 is 8. 8 plus negative 6 is 2. 2 plus negative 6 is negative 4. Negative 4 plus negative 6 is negative 10. I know I did good. The second try, the B, that one, if I were you, I would highlight it. It's the one that gets forgotten about. I would highlight it. So, why does this one cause problems?
There's no T1.
I'm going to let you answer. There's no term 1. There's so many people answering it correctly. There's no term 1. Can I make a term 1? Yes. Just take out the 1 box and fill it in later. Problem with this is that people get their n wrong. Can you see how that might happen? So once you start treating the 8 as your T1, what would your n be? 4, not 5. So what are we really doing here? We're going like this. We're going, wait, I see that there's more. Yeah, I'm recording. I see that there's more, but I'm only going to look at that portion for now. Yes, I get that there are 5 terms here, correct? But I want to treat the 8 like a term 1. And I want to treat the 2 like the last term. So if I'm doing that, I only have 4. Okay? So the common error lies here in first recognizing that you don't have to, you can treat it like a T1. And the second error comes up where people put 5 terms. There are 5, yes, But if you're treating the h as a t1 and the 2 is tn, then the n is 4. Because you're trying to find the common difference between 4 terms, not 5. Make sense? Okay. So we're going to go 2 equals t1, which is 8, plus 4 minus 1 d. 2 equals 8 plus 3d. Subtract 8. Negative 6 equals 3d. Divide by 3. d equals negative 2. Does negative 2 make sense? I'm going from 8 to 2. I'm getting smaller, so that makes sense. So when I go to the right, I add my d. If I go to the left, I'm actually going to subtract it. So I'm going to add it first. 8 plus negative 2, 6. 6 plus negative 2, 4. 4 plus negative 2, 2. And then I want to go this way. 8 minus a negative 2. What does 8 minus a negative make? Makes it a plus. So I'm actually going 8 plus 2, which is 10. So not too bad, right? If that makes sense, the next one won't be so bad. We're going to flip over. Or we're going to scroll down. Sorry. Yeah, we're going to scroll down. Thought we were moving over, but there's more down here. Oh, look at this. T11 and T30. Sounds worse than it is. Are you ready? I believe in you. You can do this. So, you can do this. So, we have T11. I'm going to prove a point here. We're not going to use T11 for now. I'm going to scroll down here. You're not going to write anything. You're just going to pay attention. Ready? Let's pretend I gave you T4 and T12. Let's pretend that. Okay? So T4 would be here. Then I would have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, wouldn't I? This would be T4. This would be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. How many blanks do I have? Count again. How many blanks do I have? 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Why do I have 9 and not 8? What do you think?
Because you're including both the blank and the 4 and
Right, you're including the end numbers. You're making the ends inclusive. So if you do 12 minus 4, that's excluding the 4 blank or excluding the 12 blank. You're excluding one of the ends, right? So the number of blanks is always subtract the 2 terms and add 1 to include that other end blank. Does that make sense? So your n is always to subtract the 2 term numbers and add 1. So saying that, instead of having to draw all these blanks out, I don't want to draw blanks from 11 to 30. That sounds like torture. So I don't really want to do that. So instead of doing that, I'm going to find out my n by saying 30 minus 11, and what do I do?
Plus 1.
Plus 1. So 30 minus 11 is how many?
Plus 1.
19. Plus 1 is 20. Now, why would I only look at those 20 terms? Yeah.
because then you can use the T11 as the term 1.
Because I can use the T11 as the term 1. I can do just what I did in the last one. Correct? So I'm going T11 is 25. And then I got a whole schwack load of lines in there. And then T30 is 101. I agree? But I'm not going to look at all 30 terms, correct? Because the only way I can find a D, so if I'm missing all of these blanks in between, the only way I can find a D is if I know T1, Tn, and n, because I can only be missing one variable to solve. We agree? So I know I have a Tn. My Tn is 101. I know I have an n. My n could be 30. If I used my n as 30, though, I would legitimately need T1. But I don't know what T1 is. We agree? So if I use n of 30, you're telling me T1 is, you have to figure it out. I don't know what it is. Can you figure out T1? No, because you don't know D. You need D to subtract to get to it, right? So we don't know the legitimate T1, do we? So we're going to treat this as our T1. T1 is going to be 25. So our N in that case is actually going to be 20. Does that make sense? If you use 30, your T1 is whatever T1 actually is, and I don't know what it is, and I can't find it. So if I'm using my T11 as my T1, my N is no longer 30. My N is how many terms are between T11 and T30, which is 30 minus 11 plus 1, which is 20. We all following? Yeah? You all give me the same look whether you get it or not. It's kind of scary. Okay. I need like little like light bulbs that shine on the top of your head if you're getting it, and like they get brighter and brighter and brighter, and then all of a sudden they dim out, and I'm like, oh, I lost them, and then brighter and brighter. Yeah. That's what I want. But like boxes, so no one else can see your light brightening and dimming. That's just me, you know, because I don't judge. No judging here. No judging area. Ready? What are we going to fill it into? Yes. The only formula we have for arithmetic sequences. We don't have options. Like, we literally don't. We have one, and this says it's an arithmetic sequence. Now, actually, it doesn't matter what I ask you to find. You're going to have to find D in whenever I give you a partial thing like this. It's the only thing you can find. So if I ever give you a partial sequence where I give you like T12 and T40, you're finding D every single time. You have to find it. It doesn't matter if I ask for the first term. It doesn't matter if I ask for the 14th term. You have to find D first. So whenever I give you a partial sequence, we're going to write this down. Whenever given a partial sequence, I should say arithmetic sequence, I must find D, no matter what is asked. So if I ask you for the first term, I'm finding D. If I ask you for the 14th term, finding D. If I ask you for the second term, you're finding D. You have to find it first. Does that make sense? I give you a partial sequence that does not start at 1 to something. You must find D first. Then you can do what it asks you for. So I don't even read the question. I have to find D. I know that that's what God knew. So my T1 or my Tn is 101 equals T1, which is 25, plus n minus 1, which is 20 minus 1, times D. So I get 101 equals 25 plus 19D. Subtract 25. And I get 76 equals 19D. And D equals 4, I believe. 5 by 19. 76 divided by 19 should be 4. Because 80 divided by 20 is 4, so 76 divided by 19 should be 4. Just looking 4 off. So we got D equals 4. Now I can go back and actually look what the question asked me for. But it doesn't matter what the question, I didn't even read it. Because it doesn't matter what the question asked me for. I have to find D no matter what. It is not like, it's not like, oh, maybe I won't have to. No, it's the first thing I have to do. It doesn't matter. And that's why these questions are sometimes done poorly. Because I will ask you for the first term, and you're like T1, and you immediately try to find the first term, and you can't, because you have to first find D. It's not an option. Okay? And I'm not going to be like, using the arithmetic sequence, please find D first. Then I want you to find, I'm not going to do that. Okay? So, because it's not reals. So I want T1, the real T1, D and Tn. Well, I already have D, correct? Tn is 101 for this arithmetic sequence. And what's T1? Well, now I can actually use the algebra to get T1. Or I could subtract 4 a whole lot of times to get me to 1, right? But I can just use the formula because this is the catch. What was my Tn? Did that change? It's 101. Didn't change. What's my T1? Well, I'm finding it. Because that was my temporary T1, wasn't it? Now I want the real T1. So what's my N now that I want the real T1? 30. Because I'm going to use all of the terms, right? So it's going to be 30 minus 1 times 4. Because that's my D. So I get 101 equals T1 plus what's 29 times 4? 126?
That's 160.
Oh, I really went off. Oh, it's 120 minus 4. I went 130. 160. Because if you do 30 times 4, you get 120, and you have to take off 4 more. Subtract 116. And what does T1 equal? Negative 15. Could I have went from T11 and then just subtracted 4 till I got to T1? Sure. But if I start you at like T40, do like 41 of them backwards, that sounds awful. Once again, you will run out of time. Okay? You're going to try B. The one right beside it. So if we do this one, we have term 2 to term 51. So n is going to equal 51 minus 2, bless you, plus 1, which equals 50. Then I treat my term 2 as my term 1. So term 1 equals 90. And my Tn equals negative 57. And I'm solving for D. Because no matter what, if I give you a partial arithmetic sequence that doesn't start at 1, you have to find D. Yeah. Tn is 57. Negative. It's term 51. So, we're going to do Tn equals negative 57. So that equals term 1, which is 90, plus 50 minus 1, D. Or subtract 90. So we get negative 147 equals 49D. 49. Divide by 49. And D equals negative 3. Does that make sense? Is the number going down? So I'm starting at negative 57. Sorry, I'm starting at 90 and I'm going to negative 57. Is it going down? So it seems realistic. Now, do I actually have to do term 1 the way I did it last time? I'm at term 2. So I can add negative 3 to get to term 3, add negative 3, add negative 3. Or I could just subtract negative 3 from 90. When you subtract a negative 3, what happens? It indirectly adds it. So what's 90 plus 3? 93. Could you go through and use the formula and still get 93? Absolutely. But your n would be 51. Okay? We're actually going to flip back to example 3. I saved the best for last. Example 3. Tomorrow we move on to arithmetic series, which is when you take sequences and you add them up. So you like add up the first 10 terms. How much would it total? So, ooh, I went a little ahead here. So we're at example 3. What the heck is the general term? The general term is just you leave out the Tn and you leave out the n. So Tn will always stay Tn and n will always stay n. So you're going to get this general equation that if I ask you for any term, you can quickly find it. So if I ask you for term 3, you could fill 3 in, get an answer. If I ask you for term 100, you fill 100 in and get an answer. Okay? That's what the general term is. So if you ever see general term means that Tn will always stay Tn And your n will always stay n. Those you will not fill in. So T1 you could fill in, and D you can fill in, but Tn you'll always write Tn, and n you'll always write n for the general term, because you're not going to fill those ones in. Okay? So, does that make sense? Don't fill in Tn, just leave it as Tn. Don't fill in n, fill in it, leave it as n. So we're going to come down here, and we're going to come back up to there. Okay. I want you to determine the general term, so it actually makes sense when we go back up to the general term what the heck it is. Okay? So we're going to determine the general term. I don't want term 1. I don't want term 5. I don't want term 6. I don't want term 1 million. I want the general term. I want the term that I can quickly fill in a number and get terms. If I can fill in 200, I got the 200th term. Really quick. Okay? And I told you with general term, Tn stays Tn, n stays n. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go Tn equals Tn, which seems stupid, but just bear with me. N equals n. We agree? What's T1? 6. What's D?
4.
4. How'd you do it?
6 plus 4.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're just figuring out what you're going to add to the next one, right? We also said what we could do is we can take the term after and subtract the term before, right? So we could do term 2 minus term 1. So we could do 10 minus 6. And we get 4. I'm going to try the next one too. I'm going to go 14 minus 10, and I get 4. We proved that yesterday, right? And that's why we could set the d's. We took those x's and we subtracted them. Term 2 minus term 1, term 3 minus term 2, right? So, I know term 1 is 6. I know d is 4. I know Tn has to be Tn, and I know n has to be n. I told you that, right? And then it's arithmetic sequences, and we're like, what formula? I have one option, so guess which one I'm going to pick? The one option I have. So we don't overthink it. The one option I have is Tn equals T1 plus n minus 1d. It's on your formula sheet. It is given to you. You will have it. So I fill in what I know. I know Tn has to stay Tn because I'm asking you for the general term. So Tn stays Tn. T1 is 6 plus n stays n, and d is 4. That's actually the general term formula. It's great. It's lovely. The catch is that version is not going to be in a multiple choice answer. We actually have to distribute and collect like terms, which is why grade 10 was so important. It taught us how to get rid of these brackets. So I need to get rid of this. So what do? Distribute. So 6 stays a 6, so I'm going to get Tn, and this is the subscript n, right? Your T is normal, your n is subscripted. So Tn equals 6 plus n times 4, 4n, negative 1 times 4, negative 4. And then I can collect two like terms, these two. So Tn equals 4n, 6 minus 4 is plus 2. There's my general term. It's so general that I can quickly find any term in this sequence. So if I ask you for a general term, you are not filling in Tn, you are not filling in n. You are filling Tn with Tn, you're filling n with n, you are distributing, you're getting an answer. Okay? Now it wants the 50th term. You can find it. I don't have to go, okay, term 1 is 6, d is 4, 6 plus 4 is 10, I'm at term 2. 14, okay, term 3. 4 is 18, okay, I'm at term 4. And then 22, like that just sounds awful. Okay? I can find term 50 easily. I have the general term. Term 50 is T50, correct? The formula I have for my general term is Tn equals 4n plus 2. What's in n spot? 50. So I just filled 50 in for all my n's. Now that I have the general term, so T50 equals 4 times 50 plus 2. It's 202. That would have taken me a bajillion years to go like, okay, 6 and 4 is 10 and 4 is 14 and 4 is 18, but I don't know what term I'm on, doesn't matter, and 22 and 26 and 30. So that's doing the aerobics class. You wouldn't know what that is, but yeah, but it's real. Okay, so term 50 is 202. Could I find term 1000 really easy now? Yeah, really easy. So that's a general term, so helpful. Now, you're going to do this one. I want the general term. What's Tn? Trick question. Tn, what's n? N, right? We don't fill those in. T1 is 3, and D is 2.5 minus 3. What's 2.5 minus 3? Because 2.5 is 2.5 minus 3. Negative 0.5. So try it out. You just have to remember to distribute. What if they just give you the general term and ask for the 100th term? Fill 100 in for n and get an answer, right? It's easy. It should be the easiest question. If they ask for the 200th term and they give you the general term, you fill 200 in for n and get an answer. That's it. That should be the easy questions on test. So your homework is, I borrowed someone's textbook because I gave mine to Ben. Your homework's on the same page as yesterday. We're moving on to series tomorrow. If you're stuck, please come in and ask questions. Tomorrow and Thursday is the only one that the very first part of lunch I have supervision. So if you're coming in at lunch, I'll be here at 12:05. If you come in the morning, I'm here at 8:10 every morning. Okay? So if you need help at lunch, Thursday's the only one I have supervision for the first half, and I think it's outside. If you want to stalk me. Okay. So once again, we're page 16. No, I don't mean 8. These are the two from the textbook, and then I'm going to call this number 1. I'm going to give you Oh, my goodness. Yeah. So, your homework, those two questions, okay? And then these two questions as well. But these two are going to be the questions we're going to go over in class. These are your daily quiz questions. I'm just not going to give them to you. So tomorrow, at the beginning of class, we're going to go through numbers 2 and 3 from today, right? From the quiz for today, we didn't go through them. And then we're going to go over these two. These are your daily quiz questions for tomorrow. You're just doing them for homework tonight. Because this is nothing. This is like 2 questions, literally. And so you have 4 questions. This is not really hard. These 2 have to be handed in Friday's homework, right? These 2 we're just going to go through tomorrow. So these are not actually to go in your duotang for Friday. The only thing that has to go in your duotang for Friday is page 16, 3B, and 9 for today's homework, okay? And then these 2 we're going through tomorrow in class. You don't even have the answers, so we have to go through that, okay?